Can a small indoor camera for less than $40 be useful in a serious setup? Could it work with Home Assistant, an open source NVR, or some other local client? Well, Sonoff sent me this little gizmo ahead of its October 10th release, which should be the day this video comes out if everything is going to plan. But is it any good? Well, we're going to find out. In order to properly assess this little camera, let me set some basic requirements. You may not have the same needs, but I'll cover as much as possible, so hopefully you'll know whether this device is right for you. First and foremost, the camera must work with my Home Assistant with the least possible configuration. Most often, I use my cameras simply to know when someone has pulled in the driveway, if a package has been dropped off, or who's eating our flowers. I'm pretty sure it's the neighbor. The camera needs to have a clear enough picture to suit whatever purpose we give it. Nanny cam, 3D print monitor, or attempting to attain indisputable proof that your neighbor has been snacking on your black-eyed Susans. A reasonable frame rate is expected, and the delay between what's happening and what I'm seeing should be minimal, especially if it gives me the upper hand when trying to scare flower munchers away, or when motion detected on the camera is meant to turn on a light or set off an alarm. Features like sound recording or two-way audio are generally standard on these kinds of cameras, so I'd be surprised if it didn't have any. I don't really use that feature often on any camera, but I do know some people do. I don't need to hear what Larry mumbles over a helping of mums to achieve my goals, but maybe you want to hear if a pet is destroying things off camera, or be able to talk to them and see their reaction, probably for a YouTube video. I think those are good basic requirements, so let's talk extra credit. I like devices that can talk to other devices from other manufacturers. I have a Reolink NVR. I'd really be over the moon if I could use this little thing with my NVR. I'll also cover some software NVRs that I know some folks use, like MotionEye or ZoneMinder. Not because I planned to, but because that's what happened. But I'll get to that. I will also take the usual things like aesthetic and build quality into consideration. I have said in a couple past videos that the Sonoff devices that I've used have all been of a pretty good build quality and look pretty sharp. We'll see if that holds up here. There's one last important thing I'd like to bring up before we dive into testing this thing. For the benefit of my viewers, I will always be completely honest. Reviews are meant to inform the potential buyer, and any good company would welcome informed purchases because it means fewer returns and a trustworthy reputation. Having said that, I also want to point out that I was not paid or coerced in any way to give this product a good review. It was sent to me free of charge, but it was sent with the simple request that I test and review it. So let's finally do that, shall we? When I was told I was being sent another product, all Sonoff told me was that it hadn't come out yet and that the date of release was October 10th, like I mentioned earlier. I didn't know it was a camera until I opened the box. I had mixed feelings immediately. I do not like products that do not allow you to have local-only cloudless control. Many of Sonoff's devices will not operate offline out of the box. There are several ways to make most of them work offline with little effort, but I didn't think that would be the case with this little camera. There are just so many features IoT companies can fleece their customers for. You know what I love? Buying a door and having to pay to make it open. You know what Sonoff did with this little camera? If you guessed lock everything down to the app and put all the features behind a paywall, you'd be absolutely wrong, as it turns out. There is a freemium aspect, but mostly with cloud recording, which I don't want anyway, and with AI detection, which I also don't care about for reasons I'll cover in another video. So make sure you're subscribed. See what I did there? Slick. The most welcome thing I discovered is that this little camera lets you turn on RTSP, which most things that connect to cameras can speak fluently. You'll see why I said most in a bit. This made me honestly excited to test drive this thing and even add it to my system rather than stick it on a shelf like so many other cameras I've come across. Now, let's take a quick look at the device claims. I'm going to read through a few features Sonoff specifically pointed out to me and then the raw specs from their documentation. The first one is customizable alert zones. Tailor your security experience by defining specific zones of interest within the camera's field of view. Focus on your alert areas and adjust sensitivity to ensure you're only alerted to events that are significant to you. I didn't test this, but it would be really hard for them to screw it up, and I'm fairly confident that they didn't because of a few other things we'll get to. Next feature. Human detection. The AI algorithm ensures the camera records and alerts only when the sensor detects a person. This intelligent recognition system reduces unnecessary notifications and enhances your ability to respond promptly to real threats. There's your pay angle, but I don't feel it's that big of a drawback since I don't want my camera feed sent to external servers anyway. Next feature. Sleep mode. It allows you to instantly cut the camera's working with a simple command. When activated, the camera falls asleep, giving you peace of mind when privacy is paramount. Shag setting. Got it. So I didn't test this either, and there's a small part of me that thinks you could just say that and not really do it. But that's very cynical, which I wear proudly, and I'm going to take it offline anyway. Next feature. Privacy zone setting. You can now designate specific areas of the camera's field of view that are off limits for recording and monitoring. This feature allows you to customize your privacy preferences effortlessly, ensuring that sensitive areas of your home remain completely secure and unseen. I didn't initially test this, but as I was writing the script for this video, I read something I'd forgotten, which was that Sonoff was recommending that I update the firmware to a version closer to the one it will ship with. So I did that, right before I wrote this sentence. I still didn't see it in the initial camera screen, but Sonoff doesn't always put things in immediate reach, so I went digging. It turns out it's in the More Settings menu inside the Settings menu of the camera in the upper right 3-dot thing. This is also where you can turn on RTSP, which also took me a minute to realize at first. Let's look at those specs now. There is a first-generation camera slim as well. That's what the S is for, you see. What's changed? Well, the first gen was sound paired apparently, which I'd like to see here. The Gen 2 pairs via QR code, and they've added active zone, sleep or shag mode, and the privacy zone setting, which is a little clunky setting up, but it works. They also added human detection that you have to pay for anyway. So it sort of seems like mostly firmware. Both generations are 1080p, which I realize is lower for today's cameras, but for the price and given the intended use isn't mounting to the ceiling of your bank, I think it's fine. It does the job. I actually think it does pretty well, all things considered. They both use H.264 encoding, of course, and they have two-way communication and an alarm that I'm pretty sure technically violates the Geneva Convention when you set it off. They both have night vision, the usual infrared setup, and they can both be RTSP enabled. This is the first gen. I do like the Gen 2 design much better, from aesthetic to the stand/mount. It also has this little rubber ring on the bottom that makes it hold really well on smooth surfaces. I think it looks pretty good. Now, it's essentially a webcam with probably an ESP32 and some extra electronics, but I'm okay with that. I really hope that I'm right and they're actually using surplus camera components from old webcam batches or the like, because we really do need to do more of that kind of repurposing. Let's talk about picture for a moment. I am okay with this. Is it as pristine as my other more expensive Reolink cameras? Of course not, but I can see what's going on in the intended field of view perfectly fine. Also, thanks to being HD, the frame rate is impressive and the delay between happening and seeing is almost nil. I was really impressed by that, I must admit. The wifi app, I've been informed of the proper way to say it, actually does a pretty good job with everything too, if you don't mind apps and such. Now, you may or may not be upset that I haven't talked about installation. Well, that's because installation was the beginning of a much longer and more involved test than I was expecting by a long way. The camera is super easy to set up physically. Plug in, point at thing, use screws if you need to. Setting it up with the wifi app is breezy too. Just hit Add Device, follow the prompts or scan the QR code, and you'll be all set. Now, as I mentioned before, you set the RTSP in the More Settings menu. Getting Home Assistant to see the camera is super easy. In the wifi app, where you set the RTSP, you can get the username and password as well as generate the link you need. In Home Assistant, just go to your Settings, Devices and Integrations, add integration, look for generic camera, and put in the information from the app. That's it. Next, I wanted to try setting up the camera on my Reolink NVR. The NVR accepts two camera types, IP and OnVIF. Neither of these helped, so I decided to create a relay using MotionEye. I realize this is super redundant, but bear with me. MotionEye saw the camera and picked up the stream just fine. No matter what I did, the NVR would not see MotionEye. So I decided to try ZoneMinder, and that also did not work. I tried FFmpeg and even making my own OnVIF proxy. Nothing worked. I did not get the camera working with the NVR, which is a disappointment, but not on the part of Sonoff. All of the other things I did connect to the Sonoff camera connected just fine, and I can pull the camera offline and still use the RTSP stream. So, after bouncing all over the place, where did we land? Not only did the camera meet the basic requirements, it took care of them handily and has a few extra tricks if you want them. The sound pickup is pretty good on the mic, and I know the speaker on the camera is capable of informing the surrounding area of an air raid. Also, I really do like the look of the thing. It's not flimsy either. My original plan was to take it apart and flash it, or at least look at the innards, but I don't even want to now. I think I'm going to keep this camera right where it is, looking at my 3D printer. I know there are other better ways of watching and even controlling prints, but I don't care. That's why I never do 3D printing specific videos. Is it perfect? No. Is it good? Yeah, I think it is. And if you think this video is good so far, why not let YouTube know in the usual YouTube-y kinds of ways, with the thumbs and the bells and whatnot. I will be doing the NS Panel Pro video, as I mentioned in the last video. This was just a bit time sensitive. It will be the next video, and I will continue both the Sonoff review list that I have, as well as revisiting some Shelly features. In fact, thanks to the new Shelly X development boards, I'll be building my own thermostat again, so make sure you catch that one. It'll prove to be very good. Or bad. I'd like to take this moment to thank my members, all of whom possess uniquely astonishing wit and charm. If you'd like to tell the world, or at least the other viewers, about your uniquely astonishing wit and charm, consider becoming a member. It really does make a difference. Thanks to channel members, I was able to double my video storage, which makes long shoots a little more bearable. To all viewers, new or returning, I want to thank you for your minutes. I truly appreciate you taking the time to watch, and I hope you'll join me for future videos as I continue exploring smarter circuits.